It was a crisp Saturday morning when I pulled my U-Haul up the quiet, winding road into the upscale neighborhood of Oak Ridge Pines. Nestled between rolling hills and ancient oak trees, it looked like something out of a postcard. My heart beat. With excitement and a bit of disbelief, I had finally made it. After years of grinding, saving every penny, and working overtime shifts, I had bought my dream home. It wasn't just a house. It was a symbol of everything I had worked for. A two-story craftsman with wraparound porches, large bay windows, and a backyard that kissed the edge of a private forest. Peace. Finally. The movers were already unloading. Some of the heavier furniture when I stepped out of the truck, sipping coffee and going over my mental checklist. I greeted them with a quick nod and a smile. My dog, Max, barked happily from inside the car, excited by all the activity. The neighborhood was strangely quiet for a weekend, no kids riding, bikes, no one mowing the lawn, and no curious neighbors peeking out. Just silence like the calm before a storm. Little did I know that storm had a name. And her name was Karen. She appeared with military precision, marching down the street like she owned every inch of it. Her arms were folded, and her lips were pursed in a permanent scowl. She wore a lemon-yellow tracksuit, oversized sunglasses, and held a clipboard like it was a weapon. I had barely pulled my new couch out of the truck when she came to a screeching halt in front of me. "Excuse me," she said, drawing out the words like she was a judge pronouncing a guilty verdict. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" Caught off guard, I smiled politely and extended a hand. "Hi, I'm Jack. Just moving into 204 Crescent Lane." Her eyes narrowed. She didn't take my hand. "That's impossible. The Johnsons live there?" "Yes," I replied. "They sold the house. I bought it." She didn't even blink. "And I wasn't informed? As president of the HOA, I'm supposed to approve all new residents." I resisted the urge to laugh. "Pretty sure. The law doesn't require your approval. I went through a real estate agent, a title company, and I signed more paperwork than I care to count. The house is mine now." Karen's face darkened. She pulled out her phone and began snapping photos of my moving truck, the license plates, even the movers. "I'm calling the police." "On what grounds?" I asked, now more amused than anything. "For trespassing and suspected theft," she said, dialing. "You look suspicious." Before I could respond, she was talking to 911, her voice rising to a dramatic pitch. "Yes, I need the police. There's a strange man at 204 Crescent Lane. He's stealing furniture and claiming he lives there." "No, I don't recognize him. He doesn't belong here." I stood in stunned silence as she described me like I was a burglar caught red-handed. The movers exchanged glances, unsure whether to keep working or not. Max barked again from the car, as if sensing the tension. A few neighbors began peeking through curtains, some even stepping outside to see what the commotion was about. And just like that, my big move-in day became a public spectacle. I decided to let the police come. After all, I had every legal right to be there. But the fact that Karen escalated things this quickly told me something about this HOA. It wasn't just about lawns and fences. It was about power, and Karen wielded hers like a tyrant. Within minutes, 2 squad cars rolled up, lights flashing. I calmly stepped forward, documents in hand, deed, ID, purchase agreement. One officer, a tall man with a no-nonsense demeanor, asked, "Sir, we got a report that you're illegally entering this home." I handed him the paperwork without saying a word. His partner took it, glanced through, and nodded. "This all looks legitimate," Karen rushed over, now red in the face. "Wait! You didn't check with the HOA registry. He's not on our approved list." The officer looked at her, unimpressed. "Ma'am, he owns the property. That's all." "That matters," Karen gasped, as if insulted by the very notion. "You mean anyone can just move in without our approval?" "Yes, that's how private property works," the officer said dryly. They left soon after, satisfied that there was no crime taking place. Karen stood there fuming, clutching her clipboard like it was a crucifix warding off evil. As soon as the squad cars disappeared, she turned to me with venom in her voice. "You may have fooled them," she hissed, "but you haven't fooled me. I'll be watching." Then she stormed off. Over the next few days, Karen made good on her promise. She showed up at all hours, snapping photos of my yard, noting how many times I opened the garage, and even taking pictures of guests' license plates. She posted passive-aggressive notes on my door. Reminder, lawn must be trimmed no longer than 1.75 inches. Trash bins must be removed from curb within 17 minutes of pickup. It was like living under surveillance. One morning, I found a violation notice tucked into my mailbox. Improper vehicle parking, U-Haul in driveway beyond 24-hour allowance. It was dated the day I moved in. No grace period, no welcome committee, just a warning. I decided I'd had enough. I called the HOA number listed at the bottom of the deal form. A bored-sounding man picked up. "Oak Ridge Pines HOA, this is Dennis." I explained the situation, and there was a long sigh on the other end. "Yeah, that's Karen for you," he said. "She runs things with an iron fist. Technically, the rules allow a 48-hour grace period for moving trucks. You're fine, just ignore it." But she said, "Don't let her intimidate you." He interrupted. "You bought that house fair and square. She just doesn't like surprises." It was reassuring to know at least someone in the HOA office had common sense. But Karen wasn't done. Not by a long shot. A week later, I got home from work to find 2 orange stickers slapped on my front window. "Unauthorized alteration. HOA review required." What alteration? I hadn't even put up curtains yet. I walked around back and saw what she was talking about. A small bird feeder I had hung from a tree branch. That's it. A bird feeder. I took it down, furious. Not because I was wrong, but because I knew this was harassment. Karen was trying to break me down, one passive-aggressive strike at a time. But I'm not easy to break. I started reading the HOA bylaws in detail. I highlighted every clause, marked every loophole, and familiarized myself with all the rules she was trying to weaponize. Then I started attending the HOA meetings. Karen wasn't thrilled to see me there. I could feel the daggers in her stare as I introduced myself. "Hi, I'm Jack, new resident at 204 Crescent Lane. Just here to learn the ropes." She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. For the next few weeks, I sat quietly in the meetings, taking notes, learning how decisions were made. And then, at the right moment, I began asking questions. "Is there a rule about bird feeders?" I'd ask. "Are new residents supposed to be greeted or reported to the police?" Each time, Karen would stumble over her answers. The rest of the board began to notice. People started questioning her tactics. Eventually, I found out that Karen had been issuing warnings without full board approval. That violated the HOA charter. I brought it up in a meeting, politely of course, and submitted a motion to revise the procedure. It passed. Karen was furious. That night, she came to my house uninvited, clipboard in hand. "You think you're clever?" she said. I stood on the porch, arms crossed. "No, I think I read the rules better than you did." She leaned in close. "You may have won this time, but this isn't over." And with that, she stormed off again. But for the first time since I moved in, I felt peace. Not because Karen had stopped, but because I realized I didn't need her approval. This was my home. I had earned it, and I was just getting started. The days that followed the election were electric with possibility. I'd expected resistance, maybe even hostility, but instead, something else took root. Hope. For the first time since moving into Oak Ridge Pines, I saw a change ripple through the community like a breeze shifting through treetops. Neighbors waved when they used to avoid eye contact. People who had lived here for decades, previously silent under Karen's watchful eye, now stepped into the light with confidence. But I knew one election win wasn't enough to undo years. of micromanagement and intimidation. Real change would require grit, patience, and a steady hand. I started by holding the first open board meeting in years. Unlike Karen's private living room-style gatherings, I booked the Oak Ridge Pines clubhouse, opened every chair in the hall, and streamed the session online for residents who couldn't attend. We served coffee, fresh pastries, and brought out printed agendas. The response was overwhelming. Over 70 homeowners showed up in person, and 20 more tuned in from home. There was energy in the room, but also hesitation. People weren't used to being asked for their opinions here. I welcomed them, outlined my plans for transparency, then opened the floor for feedback. For 2.5 hours, stories poured in. A woman shared how Karen had fined her $250 for a Halloween decoration shaped like a skeleton dog, calling it inappropriate for a family neighborhood. A man recounted how Karen had removed his backyard swing set while he was on a business trip because it violated a view line clause. Another neighbor, James, revealed he'd been threatened with legal action for installing solar panels, despite state laws protecting the right to do so. Each story had the same bitter core, control masquerading as order. By the end of the meeting, I had 4 pages of handwritten notes and over 100 suggestions submitted anonymously. The residents didn't want chaos. They wanted fairness. They didn't hate the idea of an HOA. They hated what Karen had done with it. I knew I couldn't dismantle her influence overnight, so I chose my battles carefully. My first move was to overhaul the violation policy. Instead of instant fines, we introduced a 3-step notice system. First, a friendly reminder. Then, a written notice. Only after a 3rd warning would a fine be issued, and every violation would require photographic proof, clear bylaw references, and approval from the entire board. Next, I rewrote the election bylaws to prevent someone from monopolizing the presidency again. We instituted term limits, made digital voting an option, and opened nominations to the full community with public bios. I even launched a quarterly HOA newsletter that included project updates, financials, and a spotlight on a different homeowner, each issue. That transparency alone changed the tone of the entire neighborhood, but not everyone welcomed the new direction. Karen, though removed from power, wasn't ready to go quietly. She began a campaign of subtle disruption. Complaints about noise, trash bins left out for too long, cars parked an inch over property lines, almost all traced back to her corner lot. She formed a Concerned Citizens of Oak Ridge Pines Facebook group where she posted exaggerated claims and accused me of destroying the values of the community. The group gained a handful of members, mostly people who had benefited from her old rule, but they were loud, aggressive, and bent on undermining every move I made. One day, I received a notice from the county claiming someone had filed a code violation against me for operating a business out of a residential property. I was stunned. I wasn't running any business. The only thing I'd done was add a small shed in the backyard to store tools. I drove down to the county office to get to the bottom of it. The clerk looked confused. Someone submitted a complaint with this address, claimed there were construction vehicles here every day, said it looked like you were running a logistics hub. I laughed. It's a wheelbarrow and a power drill. She rolled her eyes. I'll mark it as baseless. It was Karen. It had to be. But she wasn't breaking laws, just weaponizing bureaucracy. Still, it confirmed what I already knew. She wasn't done fighting, and neither was I. What really tipped the scale, though, came a few weeks later when I received a knock on the door from a woman named Trina. She was shaking and holding a thick envelope. I need to show you something, she said. We sat at my kitchen table while she pulled out document after document. Letters, violation slips, notices of dues increases, all signed by Karen in the years prior. Trina was a single mother, working 2 jobs, and she'd been hit with over $2,000 in fines across 5 years. Most were for trivial things, leaving her trash bin out overnight, planting flowers outside the designated color palette, and for having a car that wasn't aesthetically appropriate. When she tried to contest them, Karen had doubled down, threatening legal action and even eviction. "But that's illegal," I said. Trina nodded. "I didn't know my rights. She scared me. I just paid." We spent the next hour documenting everything. I checked the official HOA records. None of Trina's violations had been approved by a board. She'd been targeted. The next board meeting, I presented her case. By now, the board included 2 new members, residents elected after my win, and both were appalled. We unanimously voted to refund Trina the entire amount and issue an apology on behalf of the HOA. That moment sent a ripple through Oak Pines. For the first time, someone who had been crushed under Karen's thumb saw justice. Inspired, others began coming forward. We created a formal grievance process and offered independent mediation. The backlog of stories revealed a decade-long pattern of abuse disguised as order. Slowly, we corrected course. Karen's support base dwindled. One of her closest allies, a retired military man named George, actually approached me during a neighborhood cleanup event. "I didn't realize," he said, shame in his voice. "She told us you were a troublemaker, but you've done more in 2 months than she did in 10 years. I clapped him on the back. "We all want the same thing. A neighborhood we can be proud of." Spring bloomed across Oak Pines with a vibrancy I hadn't seen since moving in. Front yards exploded with color. Neighbors collaborated on landscaping projects. Kids played in the cul-de-sacs without glares from windows. We hosted a community garden ribbon cutting, and to my surprise, even Karen showed up, quiet, reserved, watching from a distance. She didn't say much, just stood beside the flower beds with her arms crossed. I approached her gently. "Karen." She glanced at me, tense. "I know you cared about this place," I said. "I believe that. Maybe we just had different ideas of what that meant." She said nothing, but her shoulders relaxed slightly. Then, after a pause, she asked, "What kind of mulch is that?" I smiled. "Cedar. Natural blend." She gave a single nod before turning and walking away. That's how it went for a while. No dramatic apology, no admission of guilt. Just silence, then small acknowledgments. She stopped harassing people, stopped reporting things. The Facebook group died off. And Karen, once the iron-fisted queen of Oak Pines, became just another neighbor. Months later, as summer approached, I received a letter, handwritten, no name, just a note. "You reminded this neighborhood that it belongs to the people. I may not agree with everything you've done, but I can't deny that it's better now. Keep going. Don't let it rot again." I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Running the HOA didn't make me popular with everyone. I still had tough calls to make, approving budgets, resolving neighbor disputes, enforcing reasonable standards, but now there was fairness, communication, and mutual respect. The community had shifted, and I knew I had made the right decision. Funny thing is, all of it, the votes, the reform, the healing, started the moment one woman assumed I didn't belong in my own house. She'd tried to cast me as the outsider, the intruder, the troublemaker. But what she didn't know was that I hadn't stolen anything. I had only reclaimed what was already mine, a place to live, a space to breathe, and the right to call a neighborhood home. And now I was helping. Others do the same,